Yo, what's up, y'all? We back. Live. It's like, sorry for the delay. It's just, the images and whatnot I was trying to import for the podcast was like giving me a little bit of, trouble or whatever. So I had to adjust things and change up certain stuff and it was fun. It was indeed fun. But we here, we live now, and we back with another episode of Train of Thought. And I'm excited about this web series or podcast, if you will. And the first episode was very successful. That's on my YouTube page, which is L Train's Fighting Dojo. Be sure to subscribe to that. The first episode was about tournament mentality and went over a lot of things as far as dealing with tournament. A lot of good information in that vid. Be sure to check that out. Take a listen to that. Shared a whole lot of valuable information, especially me being competing as long as I have at this point, roughly nearing about a decade in now at this point, just about. But definitely was able to shed some light, because a lot of people weren't aware of stuff like that. So here we are. I normally do this on Saturday mornings, but I had an event yesterday that I had to go to, so that dashed that plan out the window, because it's normally every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. It was a little delayed today because of the debacle I had to deal with, and also I woke up a little later than what I would like to. Yo, what's up, little bro? But so here we are, episode 2, and today's episode is evolution of a player. Now, this is another thing when especially in the fighting game side of things, this is basically going to reflect on the journey, the grind, whatever you want to call it. It's definitely a process. I tell people you're not going to instantly just be godlike. You start off, as my little bro would say, a villager. Shout out to Comatose. That's his saying. He calls, bum level or low level status villagers. So I guess it's a funny term to hear, but that's everybody starts off right there. So as I stated, this episode, evolution of a player. Shout out to the homies Bacon and Brian H in the picture right there. But in simpler terms speaking, the journey is very dependent on the player themselves. How far you're gonna go, where you see yourself, type of goals you set for yourself as a player, the whole nine. Is strictly a journey that's dependent on you. I always tell newer players, you only go as far as you see yourself going. So, and it's that literal. It's the same way you would treat life. Like, life is what you make it. Same thing applies here. How far you go as a player, your journey as a player is however you form, shape, or make it. You could be that competitive, casual. Shout out to the homie Mike Slooch. That's his tag nowadays, even though he's definitely far from casual. Or you could be, aspire to be that godlike player, that you see yourself being. It's fully dependent on you. I always try to tell new players also, when you're brand new, don't get discouraged by taking losses, getting beat up. All that is part of the grind. Like, all of that is you're at it's the humble beginnings. So when it's the humble beginnings, you should expect that to happen. All the players that you look up to, your Justin Wongs, your Yipes, Sanford Kelly, Nee, JDCR, Daigo, the names go on. All the names that you look up to and aspire to be maybe as, or all that, they all started at this very same point. No one was born like godlike. Like Sonic Fox did not wake up and he was at the status that he is now. All these names, all these players mentioned, you have to put the time in. You have to grind. It's an entire process. The same way you would do with any type of craft in life, you have to put work in. I think the problem with this era specifically is one, instant gratification. And it's pretty unrealistic because nothing comes instantly. Nothing is handed to us. Nothing is given to us. Nothing, is not earned. Like, it doesn't just flat out just fall in your lap. Like, if you truly want something, if you truly aspire to achieve goals and this and that, it's a foot race. It's definitely a foot race. And it could be a long foot race. I'm not even gonna hold you up. Like I said, there's nothing instant about this. So you gotta have some type of patience. Patience is important. It's one of the tools that's gonna help you navigate this journey as you push to evolve as a player. It's pretty much gonna be a tireless journey if you don't have the patience and not willing to put work in. So let's just move on and talk about specifics. So I mentioned the grind, the scrimmage, the parts that everybody doesn't see, the parts that's not on stream all the time, or this part. Like I said, we all go through this. My G. We all do. And of course, the grind, the scrimmage, learning the basics. That's the beginning. So you're a new player. You're just coming along to the scene. This may even be your first fighting game. I've actually encountered, players like, especially even in my community, like, they aspire to be Tekken players, and like Tekken 7 was their first Tekken. So you have to realize, when you're coming into any game, whether it's Tekken, whether it's Street Fighter, whether it's Mortal Kombat, whether it's Dragon Ball, Grand Blue, whatever game, you gotta learn the basics. And learning the basics is pretty much, how the game works, how, all the mechanics, the defensive maneuvers, offensive combos, all that is literally the foundation, bare bones stuff. And obviously you won't be able to play, if you don't learn basics. One mistake that a lot of players tend to make is trying to jump immediately to advanced stuff. And then when when you hear somebody say, oh, their fundamentals are lacking, and it begins to show, they begin to struggle when they fight players who have basics down. So the whole concept of crawling before walking and walking before running, that's where this comes into play. It's very important to learn how to crawl first, please. I know it's cool to, start off running early, but like I said, it's a bit unreal. It's a bit unrealistic. It's not, to me, it's not a healthy way being a player to just try to immediately jump to that, because you'll mess yourself up in the long run and you'll hurt yourself. Yo, Handsome Phil, thanks for the follow, appreciate it. So please always learn the basics. I try to stress that to all new players. Learn the basics. Like, damn it, please learn the basics. Yo, Panther, what's up, homie? Thanks for the host, appreciate it. But always learn the basics, please. I stress that. And even if you're a player that has been doing this for a little while, if you know you've been neglecting your basics, sharpen them up, because learning the basics can actually help everything else. It's a foundation. I always try to say, that house you building, you need a foundation to stand on. And if you don't have that foundation to stand on, your whole house gonna crumble eventually. It's like, oh man, I can't hold this up no more. Well, yeah, that's what's gonna happen. That's what's going to happen. That is what is going to happen. And next, after you learn the basics, okay, I know how to do this. I know how the mechanics work. I know how whistles and bells. I know all that now. So next is understanding yourself as a player. This is the part that throws off a lot of players. They usually do, like, the next two steps I'm about to talk about, they actually do backwards. And it's normal. It's normal. Most players do this. So don't feel like you're a rare case or you're an anomaly, or you doing something that's like unique, like, oh man, no, this is a pretty common thing. Most players never push to figure out who they are as a player and understanding what they even like to do as a player. So when I meet a new player, or even sometimes players that have been playing, because you don't even have to necessarily be a new player to not understand yourself as a player. Like, I've came across plenty players that have been playing long as I have, and they still don't fully understand themselves as a player. So they end up having these bumps in the road and still wondering why they stuck at these stagnant points and all that. I'm like, yeah, well, do you understand yourself as a player? Like, do you know what you like to do? Do you, like, literally, it's literally a concept this simple. A simple evaluation like this can literally change your entire journey. It can. It's important. So, like, are you offensive? Are you defensive? Are you a balance? Do you like to put people in frame traps? Do you like 50-50s? Are you more of a neutral guy? Are you more, you have to know yourself as a player. You have to, because that's going to make this journey a little easier to deal with, because it's like a roadmap. You need directions to get to where you're going. Like in real life, like if you're traveling somewhere, in order to get there, you got to know how to get there, right? You got to understand, the stepping stones. You have to know this, or you're going to be lost. You're going to take a whole lot of wrong turns, make a lot of bad decisions, the whole nine. And then you going to get to that point where, to hell with this. I don't want to do this shit no more. I'm done with it. I'm frustrated. I keep losing this, that. You in poo-putt mode. So you don't want that. So I stress this to every player. Please understand yourself as a player. That will make this whole scrimmage. It'll make the grind, the scrimmage, that much easier to deal with. It won't be as rough and as taxing as it can be, because like I said, this is a process, so it's long by nature. So you're gonna have to put time in if you really want to reach the levels you aspire to reach. You know what I'm saying? So never look to not understand who you are as a player, because like I said, even in life, to have a more pleasant journey in life, because it's not always going to be pleasant, but it could be a little easier. You have to understand yourself as a person. Again, same thing applies. This is why I love fighting games so much, because it intertwines with real life like something crazy. You know, you go through adversities in both. You know, things that could stunt your progression at times in both. But you can also be an overcomer in both. You know, in the journey of fighting games, you can be an overcomer in those obstacles where you feel like your skill ceiling didn't hit a point. You can overcome that and supersede that in life. If you're going through a hard time, you can overcome and get past that. So that's why it's so easy to relate real life to fighting games. That's why fighting games are such a beautiful thing. If you were to ask me, I would definitely tell you that. As Taquito said, fighting games are something great. And they are. Now, next step, fully learning your character. This is the part that people usually do before they do the step I just mentioned. Now, it's not a total con to doing that, because sometimes, not all the time, fully learning your character can lead to a point of self-discovery that, dang, I like this as a character. Like, maybe this is, what I really like. So in certain instances, you can get to that point in the previous step I mentioned of understanding yourself, but also a lot of times that might not happen, which why, in my personal opinion, I believe it's easier to proceed to this step that I'm about to speak on now easier when you can understand who you are as a player. Once you understand who you are as a player, it's easier to find that character and mesh and become one with that character. So as we were proceeding to fully learning your character, you have to learn all the ins and outs. What are your character's strengths? What are your character's weaknesses? And with you understanding yourself as a player, how can you apply that understanding to this character and make this character work for you? Because you'll get the most out of yourself and out of your character when those two factors and pieces intertwine. Once they do, then you'll really start seeing some fruits from the labor that you putting in, the work, the grind, the whole process will mend and come together. It's like a puzzle. When you put the right puzzle pieces together, the entire image, eventually you finish it and you see it. And that's how you should treat your goals as a player as you steadily grow. Because like I said, it's a process. That's why I called it the grind scrimmage, because this is where everything, the blood, sweat, the tears, the long hours, the countless practice sessions, all of that is going to come in this part. So that's why I tell every player, this is normal. Do not feel like it's just you going through this, because that's not the case. This is why in the previous episode where I said tournament mentality, go up to those players that have been doing this for a while and ask all the good questions, ask all the important stuff, ask whatever is on your mind, and be sure to reach out and get all the information you can, because like I said, all of us go through this. All of us do. And when going through this, you should be doing everything that you can to make your scrimmage, be that good foundation that you need to, get to the further points. Because it's you got to put in work, man. I tell people, a lot of people ask, well, how did you get to your point? I'm like, well, I endured a lot of ass beatings. Definitely a lot of that. Like my Corn Brothers, which is the group that I entered the FGC with. They'll tell you, when I first came along, I was terrible. Like, I didn't have a firm understanding of the basics like I thought I would. It's a term that we like to use. It's called hood good. And you wondering what I mean by hood good. So hood good is a terminology that we use for them players who think they really good for real because they can beat everybody in their neighborhood. So they like, oh yeah, I'm the best on my block. Yeah, but that's about as far as it really goes, though. You're the best in your neighborhood because those players are worse than you in most cases. So you're just hood good. So when you play players that actually, know more than you and are better than you, you're going to get your ass whooped. And it can be demoralizing, but only if you let it demoralize you. Me, I tell this story all the time when people ask, how did I come up? And this was when I first met my teacher, my guy, Brian James, aka Adonis the God, as is known more so nowadays. But his old tag was Ali Vegas. But I first met them, at this point? That was the end of 2011. So nearly 10 years ago now. But I had a mutual friend, my boy Torrance, but we call him Bucci. And we ended up working together at a Myers store called Myers in my state here in Michigan. And he said, yo, I got a dude that could play Tekken. His name is Brian. Now, at the time, I did not know his government name. But I always followed the FGC because I read tips and tricks books and all that. So I knew about Alex Valle, Justin Wong, Sanford Kelly. I knew about them even then. So we all meet up. This is when I first met All Caps, Footwork. All of them literally came into the picture at this point. And we go over to Cap's house and we play in the basement. And here I am thinking I'm about to get these fools to work. Man. So I meet Brian, or Adonis, for the first time. And I get completely washed. Like, it wasn't even a contest. I got my ass whooped. And lost $60 that night, too. And they said they did this to a lot of players that came along. And most of them never came back again, or they just got discouraged. Like I said, demoralized because they got their ass whooped so bad that they didn't come back. They just flat out said, man, screw this. I can't do it. I got my ass whooped too bad. My pride is hurt. My ass hurt. The pride is damaged. I'm done. So, I proceeded to get my ass whooped for a nice amount of time. It was to the point man, why can I not compete with these guys? In no way, shape, or form. So after these events, go down and transpire, I get motivated. So I begin to ask questions, grind that whole nine. And I said, okay. So I was motivated. So time goes by, then Tekken Tag 2 comes out. Because when I played them, that was Tekken 6. That was during that time. So that lets you know I go back a little while as far as beginning to compete and learn. Because I even after I got my ass whooped, I even competed in little events after that. So, but that was the very end of Tekken 6. Didn't really compete in 5 at all, but I knew about the tournaments and stuff like that. But back to that point, so fast forward, we play Tag 2, I grind, and they invite me back over but this time to Corrin HQ. We wasn't at Cap's house no more. This was now Adonis' house, which we called the Corrin HQ at the time. So, runs me through a gauntlet, and I beat everybody except him. And it was a little more contested. He didn't just completely scrape me like he did the first time. And if I had to say a humble beginning was that, it was definitely that. And from there, the journey had began all the way to, years and years later, all the way to now. But back to the original point, though, just had to have a little bit of story time right there, just to let you know, kind of share with you, my scrimmage, because like I said, all of us go through it, man. It's a mutual thing. I went through it, and all the players that you look up to and admire went through it. But fully learning your character, learning all the ins and outs, learn your best tools, what's your worst tools, how can you make those weaknesses into strengths somewhat. Like, you want to become one with your character to the point where, especially if you're a specialist, and people will look at you and they'll be like, oh yeah, that's his character. Like how people do with me with Lars, they be like, yeah, that's Train's character. Like, he knows the character inside and out. He understands what he likes to do as a player, and you can tell when he plays, they're one. Or like another player, that a great example of another player is, let's see, we'll use another Tekken player, Anakin. Anakin and Jack. When you think of Jack, you think of Anakin. Knows the ins and outs of the character, knows how to apply all the strengths and nullify the weaknesses, and he knows who he is as a player. So that's why you see the results that he gets, and why his reputation with said character is so renowned. Like, he's the best player in America right now. So, and just like how I mentioned, he went through the scrimmage too. He didn't just start off like that. He started off as a young kid. I think Anakin started playing when he was like preteen. He's younger than me, but he been playing longer as far as being competitive and whatnot. So I think he about 28, 29 now or something like that. So I'm in my 30s. And I may not look it, but But anyway, that's besides the point. But fully learning your character. Because when you're competing and you're in tournament, you're going to use your character, of course, against all the other matchups in the game. And even at times, now, this is when I say fully knowing your character comes into play. When you play in a mirror match, meaning somebody else also uses your character. Now, the common thing about most people is they don't like mirror matches. Well, me personally, I'm one of them odd people that loves the mirror match, because it's a test of how much you know your character for real, and can you outplay me with this character. So I love mirror matches. I don't really run from mirror matches. I actually run toward them, because it's testing my knowledge, it's testing your knowledge of the character, and we could ultimately learn from each other. There may be some stuff that you do that I don't do, or there may be some stuff I do that you don't do. It's the process of application in that point, and that's why mirror matches, pick them. Please show me what you know with Lars, and can you outplay me with the character? You know what I'm saying? That's how I usually feel when it comes to that. I don't run from mirror matches. Like I love it. Like, please, even when I was playing Street Fighter 5, if you play Nash, I'm like, okay, let's see what's up then. Let's see how well you can play. But that's the confidence you're gonna get when you know your character. When you know your character, you're gonna feel empowered. Yo, Megas, what's up, brother? What's going on? But your confidence is gonna be there when you fully know and understand your character. You're gonna walk into matches with confidence, and that kind of links over into the next point, which is understanding matchups and building your knowledge. Now, as I mentioned with your character, when you compete, whether it's tournament, casuals, whatever it is, whatever form of competition that you go into, you are going to be going against the rest of the cast in said fighting game. So it is your job to understand these different matchups and increase your knowledge so you can better compete. This is a part of the scrimmage that's neglected by a lot of players, because most of them just focus on optimization of most of the time combos, which is a big mistake when that's the sole thing you focus on. It's important, yes. I'm not going to tell you to not do it at all, because that's incorrect as well. But don't make it your sole focus. You need to be in the lab, because like I said, the point after this I'm going to make, of course, as you see at the very bottom, is practice, practice, practice. Literally take all these things that I've aforementioned, and culminate it. You know, make the most of it and really progress. That's why I use the word scrimmage. You know, scrimmage is typically used when you're, you know, if you play sports or know about sports in any capacity, they have what you call scrimmage, which is basically practice. This is where you develop your skill set and learn and understand the game and all that more. That's that. So when you're competing as a fighting game player, your job, of course, is to understand the matchups and the knowledge, especially if you're having trouble with certain matchups. I really try to tell players that have problematic matchups, them the ones you should focus on the most. You should focus on all of them, but the ones that you're strong in, I wouldn't put the same exact amount. I know I'm not about to say don't put no attention on them at all, because you want to stay strong in those matchups. So that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you should put, you know, it's like when you're reading a book and you highlight a specific part, you need to highlight those problematic matchups. The ones you had the most problems with, like things I may ask new players is, well, do you have matchups that you struggle with? What are those matchups? And then they tell me, and then, you know, I give them as much advice and tips as I can on dealing with said matchups, and like, well, this is what you should do. This is how you deal with this, that, and the third. And it's up to them, of course, to take in, you know, what they've learned and further build. You got to build. And the more you understand matchups, the more you build up your knowledge. When you compete, especially in tournament play, when you compete in tournaments, it'll be that much easier to play matches, because your knowledge on the matchup itself is strong enough to the point where it will become a point where you reach player versus player. Now, the player versus player concept is a bit more advanced than understanding the basic matchup and all that. And the reason why it's a little more advanced is because when it's player versus player, yeah, you have to understand. Yo, Alex, thanks for the host, man. Appreciate it. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. But as I was saying, when it reaches the point of player versus player, your knowledge, of course, applies and fits here, but you now have to understand your opponent. This is when the thrill of competing comes in. Well, for most people. But the thrill of competing is how well can you adjust to your player that you're playing against, knowing your opponent. Now you're thinking to yourself, I can't put my opponent in practice mode and specifically, practice against my opponent. This is very true. But the way to deal with that is, again, applying that basic knowledge and also using two skills that are very underrated when it comes to the scrimmage, and that's adaptation and awareness. These are two things that are neglected by a vast majority of players. And the reason for that being neglected, why you may ask, is because, you may just focus strictly on, okay, I'm gonna learn all my combos, I'm gonna learn all my basics. And like I said, I understand it's good to learn those things and hone those things, but when in the heat of competition, while those things are important, it is also important to be able to adapt to your opponent and be aware of what's going on. When you do those two things, it not only helps you fare better against your opponent, but it's also gonna make your opponent's fight against you harder. So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone, because you're adapting. So, and those two go hand in hand, because you can't adapt if you're not aware. Awareness is important. Like, case in point, let's use a sports game as an example, since we're using the word scrimmage. It just goes hand in hand, and I'm a sports fan too, so it's a little bit of that mixed in there. But let's say you got Lakers versus the Clippers. I just use that as an example, since that game is about to happen in real life today at like 3:30 p.m. But that's besides the point. So Clippers are running, a specific type of defense. So Lakers are on offense. So now it's up to the Lakers to run an offense that's going to disrupt the defense that the Clippers are running. And in order to do that, you have to be aware. You have to look at things like, okay, so how are the players aligned? How are they protecting the paint? Okay, they're protecting the paint in this way. So what can I do to open up that lane and make it easier for us to score? So you then, paying attention to that, you're aware, you then begin to execute a plan to open up the opportunity to score. Well, now let's jump back to the fighting game side of this. Okay, so I got an opponent. Match starts. One thing I always tell players is observe what your opponent does as soon as the round starts. Are they aggressive as soon as, it said as soon as the round begins? Do they bag up? Do they just sit there? You have to pay attention to these things, because if paying attention to these things will help your approach, like how you should go about it. Case in point, if I know that a player is overly aggressive, my main thing is I'm going to create space, because if you come out swinging, I want to increase my chances to punish you or punish you for whatever you do. And then, of course, in doing that, now again, the awareness, now you respond, you adapt and respond to the situation, and which puts the match more in your favor. So when it's player versus player, yes, you use your basic knowledge that you know in the matchup and just general knowledge in general, but you then use that adaptation and awareness to combat against the player. That's what makes competing in tournaments or competition in general, we're not even going to just say being competitive in general, once you put all that together, that's when the thrill, the adrenaline rush and all that kicks in. making player versus player just it can get intense. Because if you ever watch any type of competitive sport and you watch and you see how they just adjusting to each other, this and that, like this intensity is building to the point you could feel the tension in the air at that point in most matches, especially when it gets like crazy. I think it gets the craziest when it comes to that, when it's two rivals playing against each other, meaning it's two players that are pretty much on the same skill level and fight each other frequently, and it's a fight every time, and that's where that comes from. But I will say something about rivals. The Yomi, as I would like to say, is pretty much a term that dictates that specific match. Like, meaning how much they understand each other, they know the ins and outs of each other, like habits and all that. So the matches are that much more intense as opposed to two people that don't know each other at all play against each other. You know, it creates, it's a difference. So, which is why when you see rivals play against each other, the matches are like damn near down to the wire and just intense every time. But that's the beauty of seeing that. It's dope. I love watching rivals play. You know, at times though, when it's you versus your rival, at times it can be taxing, especially if you're in a tournament and you end up having to run into your rival anyway, and you're like, oh my God. And the match is gonna be that much harder just because that factor is there. So, and when it comes down to that, it's pretty much who is the better man that day. That's usually how it goes. Who is the better man that day? And yeah, you can apply that to general competition because it's, you know, the better man wins. That's a general concept, but it's an even stronger factor when you going against your rival. And now traverse to the very last point at the bottom. Practice, practice, practice. Most players neglect practice. Let's just keep it 100 about that. Most players neglect practice. Even I, especially as of recently, have neglected really practicing. And you know, sometimes real life can kind of get in the way of that. But if you truly want to progress, if you truly want your scrimmage to really just be worth it and come together all together, practice, 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 because that's what a scrimmage is. So you have to get in them trenches. That stuff you keep losing to or have trouble with, you gotta sit down, put your ass in that lab and practice, because that's the only way you're going to progress and eventually get past the hump that you may be struggling with. You know, you're like, oh man, every time I go against this, I have trouble with it. How do I overcome this? Well, it's really quite simple. You just gotta practice. You got to. There's no way in any craft in life, if you aspire to be good, you can't cut corners and not practice, because you're gonna get exposed. Because when you don't practice, you don't perfect your technique, and when your technique is lacking, you bound to get your ass whooped. Perfect example. We got any boxing fans in the chat or watch boxing? And you know, recently we saw Fury versus Wilder. This was their rematch, and Fury, you know, bust Wilder's ass, and Wilder got exposed pretty bad. His lack of technique and all of that showed in that match. And just like we could revert right back to, you know, the fighting game side of things. When you fight against somebody that has better fundamentals than you, you're going to more than likely get your ass handed to you because you didn't practice, you didn't perfect what you needed to perfect to be prepared for said tournament. So now you go up against that player that's just gonna make you look silly, and you end up getting turned into a damn ragdoll. But at that point, you can't get discouraged or down about it. That's your wake-up call. But the problem is, most players' pride and ego goes into overdrive at that point. So they pride and ego kicks in, and then you get two types of responses. You either get the overly salty player who gets pissed off, blames the game, wants to money match, wants to do all that, this, that, and the third. Or you get the other response where you just feel like you uttered trash. I don't want to play no more. I quit. This is too hard. You're literally going to get them. I guarantee you those two responses happen when you feeling legit ill prepared. And then you get your ass whooped and that loss hurt. I'm not even going to sit up here in front to you. Losses hurt. Especially when you're a competitive person, you're a competitive player, losses hurt. No one wants to lose. Especially if you've been putting in work and grinding hard and strictly preparing yourself for this very moment, and you lose. No one likes to lose. I don't know nobody that likes being a loser. And if you do like being a loser, you're borderline weird. That's just my thoughts on it. I don't know nobody that likes to lose. Of course, through loss, you can find success because everybody that's won fails, but you have to take that failure, harness it, and turn it into a tool to help you win. Yeah. But even then, no one likes to fail. No one likes to lose. But it's a part of growing and getting to the point where you are successful. But that's the difference between a person that loses and then a person that learns. Yeah, you take a loss in either scenario as far as like in the literal meaning of loss, meaning you didn't win, but you truly lose when you don't take that experience and harness it and turn it into fuel to win. It's the getting knocked down and you either stay on the ground or get back up concept. Like, in a boxing match, yeah, you may get your ass knocked down, but are you going to get back up, or is that count going to reach 10 and you lose and then you just give up? You got to get back up. Because you're going to get knocked down a few times, and this evolution, evolving as a player, you're going to get knocked down. It's going to happen. And at those points, you have to come to the realization, well, I'm still trying to grow. This is hard, this hurt, this part, this fall, this stumble, it kind of messed me up. But, am I going to continue? Or do I quit? Do I throw in the towel? And that's when you gotta reach that. It really is a rite of passage, this journey. It really is. It's like that fork in the road, and you got to choose whatever path you want to go down. Like, it's that real. It's that simple. Like, do I want to continue my scrimmage, or do I want to bow out? I don't want to play for the team no more. I'm done. That's it. Like, it's that real. So, moving on. So, we've discussed the scrimmage, the grind, Now, the next part, the stage and beyond, which is the rest of the journey. And I've mentioned some of these things during the scrimmage in the sense of this is what you're going to encounter. Now, let's specifically talk about that. So the stage and beyond. Yo, Roomaster, what's going on, bro? And Danny, what's going on? And thanks for the host too, Danny. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. So, the journey, of course, takes you to the first point, which is application of what you practice when in battle. So, everything you did during your scrimmage, you're now about to apply into the actual game. So, as I mentioned, all sports teams, boxer, tennis player, whatever competitive thing you compete in, okay, everything that I did during my scrimmage, now I gotta do it. This is the real thing. Holy shit, this ain't a simulator, this is the actual game. So, now, all that blood, sweat, and tears, all them hours you now have to get on that stage and put on. So, in the fighting game terms, okay, tournament day is here. I know my pool. You know, I see who I gotta go against. I practice. I did this. Yada, yada, yada. Now it's time to put up or shut up, which is the thrill. This is one main reason why I love competing. I remember when I did a documentary a little over a year and a half ago called A Fighting Chance. And I was pretty much asked, you know, why do I like to compete? And I said, well, it's really just to see how far I can go, you know, which we're going to traverse into in the next point. But that was pretty much my answer, you know, just to see how far I can go, how good I could really be, who I could take down, make a name for myself, all that. So the application of applying of what you practice and put down about, you have to, again, when you get to the tournament, you know, sit down, shake hands, and the fight begins. And this is the thrill, the rush, all of that. You've hit that point now. And as I mentioned, this is player versus player, but everything that you culminated while practicing applies here. Now you just have to outplay your player. Now, one of the things that, you know, people, Panther, yo, what's up? That people tend to at times fall victim to. You ever hear people say, oh man, well, he was doing this like a gimmick or something. I didn't know the matchup. Well, this goes back to the scrimmage. Well, what did you do during your scrimmage? Did you practice what you needed to practice? Thanks, Guru. Appreciate it. But yeah, it's like, did you practice what you need to practice? You know, did you look at the possibility of this happening? Because that gimmick that you could be falling victim to might be a common thing of the character. And did you take time during scrimmage to practice that? I'll even use an example as far as the Tekken side of things. So, you know, there's a character on the game named Kazuya. And he's, you know, a Mishima, which is a specific type of character. And they have a tool in their arsenal called Hell Sweep. And Kazuya specifically has something called a vortex. And a vortex is a sequence that can occur over and over. Meaning, you know, you get knocked down by the Hell Sweep and then you get caught up in a follow-up, which is he has a move called Steel Pedal. And yeah, mind games is another thing that comes into play, but mind games are a little deeper. You know, mind games are a little deeper. Oh, what's up, Turk? Man, Turk, look, you can get the hands too. You know, we ain't scared. I definitely should see you now that you in the Midwest right now. I hope you can make it to some things up in these parts. But as I was saying, that vortex and okay, well, during your scrimmage, did you emulate the vortex and try to see how you could get out of it? Because at the end of the day, when it comes to this part of the journey, again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, this journey is all on you. So, if you didn't practice this, you can't blame your opponent. Your opponent did what they were supposed to do. But in a lot of cases, it's salt. Like I mentioned, the two responses you're going to get, you're either going to be extremely salty or you're going to want to quit and give up. Oh yeah, Turk, I definitely keep you in the loop now that I know you around these parts. I definitely keep you in the loop because you in Cincinnati, right? That's about like 3.5 hours from us, I believe. 3.5, 4 hours. But ain't too far when we've done longer trips. But anyway, back to what I was saying though. You're going to get them two responses. And this is when you could do the scrub quotes thing like, oh, I didn't know the matchup. To me, that's a scrub quote. And you kind of almost discredit your opponent when you do that. When in actuality, you wasn't prepared. Let's just keep it 100 about that. Let's keep it 100. You were not prepared. So you wasn't ready. So, because you wasn't ready, you're a little salty about that. So it's like, damn. But again, application of what you practice when in battle. So you gotta, you know what I'm saying, be able to practice what you need to practice so you could lower the chances of that kind of situation happening. You're as good as what you practice. That's one thing I like to tell myself. And even with me, I say this, I have to get back to practicing as hard as I used to because nowadays I'm just relying on like primarily legacy skills since I've been playing for so many years. And thanks for the follow, Turk. Appreciate it, bro. Appreciate it. But I relying on legacy skill. Legacy skill will only get you so far, in a sense, because these new, especially when you fight against these newer players, you got to realize when you a veteran, especially when you going against these newer players are hungry. So with them being hungry, they're going to practice hard. So as being the vet, you have to practice just as hard, if not harder, to, be able to hold your, position if you have one as being like, you're a top dog or whatever and this, that, and the third. And I can admit for myself, I don't practice as hard as I used to. And I also have to admit that my local community, the people that I play with, have definitely begun to level up and are banging. They are. So, but that's, again, I'm not blaming nobody else. That's me. That's what I haven't did on my journey. You know what I'm saying? You got to own up. You got to take accountability for that because that's the only way you're going to see the progress and results that you really want to see. So moving on to the next point, traveling to test your skill. Now, this is for every type of player, whether you're brand new or you've been playing for a long time. If you're truly competitive, I highly suggest you travel to test your skill, whether it's going to tournaments or just going somewhere to train with other players, just to test your skill, your ability, your knowledge, and truly see where you stand and also what you can learn. It's vital. If you're a competitive player, it's vital to do this, in my opinion, because again, this is going to help your overall journey. You know, when you're on that stage and beyond, you know, do you want to compete and eventually hold that first place trophy over your head? You know, because let's be real, when you competitive and you win and you get that trophy, it's like I tell people, you know, winning money is, of course, definitely awesome, but if it's a trophy or something, I want that trophy. I want that medal. I want this to be immortalized in a great memory. So that's why I think it's important to travel and test yourself. You got to test yourself. You got to see everything that you've done in your scrimmage. How good did you prep during your scrimmage? You know, this is traveling, competing is the test of that. How well did you put yourself together in scrimmage? Did you run your drills? Did you know, practice matchups like you needed to? Did you optimize your combos? Did you up your defense? Like all of this work that you put in will be tested to the fullest extent at these tournaments. That's why people wonder why all of us players like to compete. This is partly why we get a rush from it. You know, all this work that we put in, playing low, going to your locals, grinding with your homies, having sessions at each other's houses, all of that. All of this is a culmination of that. And I didn't at this point in my competitive journey and career, I've traveled to many places, played with different communities. Like, you know, I mentioned Atlanta. I done been down there a nice amount of times over the years, played with those guys, grinded, went to the Tekken house, you know, got good games in, you know, go to final round, all that. Get, you know, they're an extended family. So, and that happens when you travel. Because another reason why you travel, you meet the people that you may play online, and you build friendships, you build connections, and all that happens. And that's also another joy of traveling. And then you can test how hard you've been working against, you know, your extended homies. Like, yeah, we boys, but when we pick them controllers up, it's mano y mano. You know what I'm saying? It's time to, you know, how well have you prepared yourself? You know, we boys and all that, but when we pick up them sticks, it's time to compete. At that moment, you temporarily the enemy. I'm trying to best you. and I think that's the misconception that most people have now. They think that it's not okay to have rivalries, to have friendly, you know, shit talk and all that. It's good for that. To me, that's healthy for competition, because that's gonna keep you hungry. That's gonna want to, you know, keep you competing, keeping you wanting to travel and testing yourself. You know, I come from the what you would like to call the arcade era. Like, I was young as a kid. My dad would take me to the arcade, and I would see these intense games and see people talking trash and stuff like that and all that. So trash talk really don't bother me. It actually is more so fuel for me, you know. But I know everybody isn't built like that, because in the era that we live in now, the times have changed, and we live in more of a online gaming era. And arcades are pretty much deathbed status now. And, you know, the way you respond to something, everybody's not going to respond to that. And can't get mad at that, because like I said, this is a journey, and everybody's journey is traversed differently. We all have the same journey, but the way you run the course may be different. If you feel where I'm coming from. But yeah, that's the reason for traveling. If you're competitive, traveling and testing your ability is the greatest test. How well do you do at these tournaments? Do you do well at your locals? Do you do well at regionals? Do you do well at majors, invitationals, whatever form of competition? Test it. If you're truly competitive, I highly recommend traveling to test it, because it's going to help you more than hurt you. It's not really going to hurt you because you're trying to advance yourself. And self-advancement, whatever steps you need to take for it, you should take. And that's that real when it comes to that. So moving on to the next bullet point, the highs and the lows. This is as common as it gets on the journey for all of us. So as I just said, we run the course maybe a little differently, traverse stuff we deal with, all that. We all feel the same highs and the same lows. Of course, what's the highs? Well, the highs could be, placing well, winning the whole nine. You getting them dubs, or you praising well, and then of course on the other opposite end of that is the lows. You may get your ass whooped real bad at times. Take some bad losses, some bad, it's just and we don't like the lows. It's like I said about people not liking to lose. We don't like it, but we have to swallow that pill and accept it because it's part of the journey. And like I said, even in life, we never like the lows of life. And we know all the lows in life could be, you lose your job, you lose a loved one, you deal with self-demons and stuff like that. We don't like none of that stuff. None of that stuff is enjoyable to go through or deal with. But it's part of your journey. And it's going to eventually help you grow. It's going to help you build character, the whole nine, etc. Well, in fighting games, them lows, them losses, them, they're gonna help you become a stronger player, and eventually lead to you experiencing more highs than you do lows. But both are part of the process. So you can't let yourself, think, oh man, this is unique to you. It's really not. We all go through it. This is why I stress talk to other players and try to get into their mind and see how they think and hear how they may deal with certain things. Like, how do you deal with the highs? Because even dealing with the highs is a thing. Because once you start to build notoriety, especially when you're competing, you start winning more, you start to gain a bit more clout under your name, you start to become more renowned, you start to gain a following and all this, that, and the third. You have to know how to even deal with that. Because sometimes when you have people that experience the highs, they sometimes can become arrogant, big-headed, and think they above everybody, when in reality you're not, and you went through a lot of the same steps that the players that you may be trying to put down have went through. Come on now, let's be for real. You were a villager, you were a bum at the beginning of your journey. You didn't start off at the status that you were. You were a goddamn bum, just like how I was said person may be a goddamn bum at the moment that you meet him, etc., etc. But when you gain a following and you got people looking up to you, you have to keep that in mind. In a sense, be humble. Now, there's nothing wrong with confidence, but always remember you had humble beginnings too. And you had these players that are coming up under you that aspire to reach where you be at, or, at least progress and become better than what they were yesterday. So it's up to you to know how to deal with the highs. That's like in my community. I'm one of the people that are looked up to. I'm one of the veterans. I'm one of the OGs, the Hokages of the community, if you will, at this point. And there are players who look up to and respect me. And me in general as who I am, and that's partly because of my upbringing, is I'm a pretty humble guy. Yeah, I'm confident in myself. I believe in myself when I need to, but I'm also humble and know where I came from. So, even with me being a known name, competing and me building my brand with my stream and it's growing and all that and the highs and lows. Yeah, all that may be happening. All that progression may be occurring. But I remember where I started. I remember beginning as a bum. I remember beginning, meeting the corn gang, getting my ass handed to me for some months and losing bread. And I remember all that. And me remembering all that keeps me leveled to when even though I am experiencing my current highs, them lows will remind you real quick. You know what I'm saying? The lows can humble you real fast. You start to smell your own, shit, and you you really, you know what I'm saying? It could humble you real quick. So that's why it's important to be level-headed. Yo, thanks, Mango. Or thanks, Justin. I appreciate that, man. Like I said, I try to be, as genuine as a person else can be. And part of that is because of what I went through in life. Again, them highs and them lows that I've been through in life. And I done been through that, and it's helped shaping the character, as I mentioned. Well, the same thing in my fighting game journey. I done went through a lot of highs and lows, and it's helped mold me as a player. So, same thing. But we could drift over to the next point, which is, of course, the progression, which is the overall journey. This is the scrimmage. This is everything that, everyone, when it begins to come full circle. This part of the journey is always nice because now I use the word progression. Now, progression doesn't always mean absolute victory. Like I mentioned in the Tournament Mentality podcast, it's the steps, that progressive ladder, as I mentioned in that podcast. So in a progressive ladder, you steadily climb. So if you're a new player per se, and you fresh into the scene, you like, okay, this is my first tournament, so I'm looking to possibly win at least one game. But that might not happen. You may end up becoming that 0-2 monster. Which goes back to why I said don't be discouraged. Them highs and them lows, do not be discouraged. If you again make the most of this journey, you make the most of your scrimmage. This is all on you as your career in competing in tournament. This is you. You formed this. So yeah, I went 0-2, but am I gonna let that get me down and quit? Because another thing that I do stress to new players is that you're not going to win them all. It is impossible. Some of the greatest players in the history of fighting games have suffered difficult losses because you can't win them all. So do not overly beat yourself up, because like I said, all of us as players, we don't like losses. We don't like defeat. These are things that we don't like. But realistically, this is part of it, because you cannot win them all. Like yesterday, I didn't perform as well as I know I could at the equalizer. I got 4th place. And of course I didn't like that. I would have liked to won again because I won last month. But I know realistically that's not gonna happen. So you got to take them losses. I'm like, okay, I lost. What do I do next time to strengthen my performance? And if you put the work in and go back and then, hey, you get the W, hey, that's progression. Progression comes in all forms. So like I said, you may be 0-2, that first week, and then next week you come back to the weekly that very next week, and you may go 1-2. Okay, that's progression. That is progression, no matter how little or how big it is. It's progression. And again, progression comes in all forms. That combo you may be practicing during scrimmage that you saw, in a combo video is pretty hard, but then you start to nail it. That's progression. Progression is beginning to see success and no matter how big or how small. And you gotta have them small celebrations when you do accomplish small goals, because the thing that you see the most when a celebration occurs is when big thing occurs. And of course, obviously, it's big. So it's something that's worth celebrating. But you gotta celebrate the small stuff too. Like, I remember when I was doing my therapy sessions, I'm gonna get a little IRL on y'all, real life stuff real quick. And the therapist told me, you gotta celebrate your small victories, because you don't know how much that could boost your overall morale. And I was sitting there when that was said to me, I said, damn, I never thought about it like that. Because I was the type of person where if I didn't meet the expectations expected of me, or from other people, not even necessarily my own expectations, but I feel I didn't live up to or be to where I was supposed to be as far as where society would say that in the third, I felt like I was a complete failure, and I beat myself up. And I tend to, now back to the fighting game side of things, I see a lot of players do that to themselves, especially when they early on in their journey. You can't do that. You can't think too far ahead, because I'm gonna share a real quote with y'all that Will Smith said, and this has resonated with me ever since I heard it. Expectations are the mothers of disappointment. Again, expectations are the mothers of disappointment. Like, notice, let's put a tournament scenario. So you got this tournament coming up. You set your expectations to, I want to make top 8. Tournament starts, holy shit, I lose my first damn match. So now, that expectation that you set for yourself, you like, damn. Now you're stressing because the threat of that expectation not happening is very real. So you begin to panic. Now your mind becomes jaded, and then you just play terrible, and then you may possibly end up going 0-2 and performing bad that tournament. I'll just keep it a buck with you. No, I just saw what Fine said. So I got something to celebrate. I got a single combo on the TWT champion last year or something. Hey, celebrate it. Shit, I landed it. Yeah, woohoo. But yeah, just the little things. I mean, that is dope. Especially the level that Chickering is at. I mean, you're talking to you're talking about the TWT champion of the one that just passed. So yeah, that is dope. But back to what I was saying. So you set your expectations to such an extreme that when you don't achieve it, you now are having a bad time at the tournament. You're overly salty. You don't want to talk to nobody. You don't want to be around people because you didn't meet the expectations that you set upon yourself. Now, don't get me wrong. Because like I said, I'm being 100% real with y'all when it comes to this. When you reach certain levels of skill and notoriety as a player, there are certain expectations that people expect of you, but also that you expect of yourself. Because you know where you stand. This goes back in the scrimmage, understanding yourself as a player. This also falls into that realm. So when you know who you are as a player, you know your capability, you know where you stand. There's a certain standard that you're going to hold yourself to. But also realistically, you may not always meet that standard. You may at times fall short. Like I said, the lows are very real. So exactly, like Smash GG. Yep, a good point, fine. Smash GG has expectations where they project the winners. And a lot of players look at them projections and then now their mind is to try to live up to that expectation. I don't even really like to look at that. I really don't. Cause now you didn't let the thought enter your mind that damn, I need to meet, especially if you end up being the player that they project to make it to said point. So now this is in your mind to, oh damn, I gotta meet this expectation that Smash GG said. You see how slightly silly that sounds? Like this is an app. This is an app that comprised data from past events and past placement and standing and seating, and that's where they're getting these projections from. It's not even how well you play that day. That's one thing you gotta remember. Yeah, it's a projection. Like I said, when you reach a certain skill level, there's a certain standard that people will hold you to and that you begin to hold yourself to. But realistically, you're not always going to hit that point. There may be times where you underperform. There may be times where you do hit the point they project. There may be times where you supersede that point. Which links over to the last bullet point. Whatever happens, happens. And I definitely stress this to players. Whatever happens, happens. This is part of the journey. Just like life, no matter how much you prep during scrimmage, you done did this. You know, like let's use life as an example. You done did your schooling, you done did this, all these steps. But life is very unpredictable. Things can happen, things can change. That plan that you set up might not pan out exactly as it goes. Same thing in this FGC journey. You prep and do all this time that you put in to prepare yourself for these events and this, that, and the third, and it just might not go the way that you prepared for. So whatever happens, happens. All you can do is do what you need to do, and however the universe plays out, it plays out, honestly. Because we don't know how things are going to pan out. Yeah, we can try to prep ourselves as much as we look to, but it could play out in any way. That's why on this journey, evolving as a player, this is one factor you need to keep in your mind, is that whatever happens, happens. Because most of the time when I go to these events and tournaments and stuff now, I've been competing for so long at this point that I don't really set expectations for myself as far as how I'm gonna do. I just try to play the best that I can that day, and whatever happens, happens. So if I underperform, it is what it is. Okay, that was one tournament. Let's move on. If I meet the, standard that people hold me to, it is what it is. So if I end up winning the whole event, hey, that's what's up. Celebrate, let's go eat, pop bottle, that, the whole nine, that, yada, yada, yada. But again, those are all different scenarios, and you don't know which one is going to happen necessarily. So whatever happens, happens. It's important to know this, because when players, again, like the Will Smith quote I did, mothers are the expectations are the mothers of disappointment. when you set these high expectations, especially like I'll even go back to my community. We have a lot of newer players, a lot of players that are coming under me. Like the vets, of course, here, like me, my boy Rodney, aka D Towns King, my boy High, All Caps, Footwork. You know, just the guys who got a whole lot of time in. You know, you have the newer players who compete and they're trying to, you know, get to where we at or be on par with us. And I tell new players, I said, it's kind of unrealistic to set that on yourself because your disappointment is going to be that much higher because you set your expectations to such a level that if you don't even somewhat achieve that, you're going to feel extra low. And then you're going to be discouraged and not want to play no more. Like they say, I just tell myself that I don't want to drown in pools or go 0-2. You know, and I feel you. Because like I'm not going to say you're wrong because you're human. And like I mentioned, we're competitive players. We don't want to lose. So we never go into an event with the mentality of, damn, I want to lose. I want to go 0-2. Hell no. When you're competitive, I'm all the way 100 about that. Hell no. I don't ever enter an event talking about I want to lose. Hell no. So it's human. You're human. We're all human. We don't want that. But at the same time, to Danny, especially you specifically, I would definitely apply to whatever happens. And I promise you, even thinking like that, you won't be as stressed when you're playing. Because, you know, if it's one thing I notice when I play a lot of players is that they're very tense and they're stressed out, like here locally. And meanwhile, you look at me, High, or Rodney or whatever, and we look pretty calm when we play. And we don't really immediately stress out. Not saying that we don't feel nervous or anxiety or nothing like that, but our game face, we're better to, our composure is strong. And that's not something you can necessarily practice. That comes with years and years of experience and time. So that's why when I tell you, you know, don't get overly down when you take a loss. Yeah, we don't like losses. We don't like to lose. That, like I said, you're not wrong for not wanting to lose, but don't take it so hard to the point you begin to question your ability. You begin to question your scrimmage. You begin to question your reasoning for even being on the journey at all. That's when you get into a bad space. And like I said, the same thing can go for life. You know, you start to experience these failures, you start to go through these things, and now you contemplating, do you even want to go on? You know, and then bad thoughts and things like suicide and stuff come into play. I'm speaking from experience because I done went through all these things in life. So I know how it feels. I know how it feels to be in that spot. So I'm talking to you from a point of experience, and not just because I'm older than you or you're a senior, but because I've been there, I've done that, I've been in that space, I done been there. So I'm trying to, you know, kick something to you to help you out. And, you know, with both of us being in this fighting game thing, and even in life, we both experience in life, even as your, not just as your, you know, OG or superior in fighting games, but even in life, you know, I could push some advice to you in that sense, because since we are, you know, friends, and it's only right for me to kick something that real to you. So when it comes to both those things, don't ever let yourself get that beaten down to the point you don't want to go on no more. Because like I said, these things happen. So it's up to you to take what happened and try to use it as fuel to get back up, because we gonna get knocked down. We gonna have our highs, we gonna have our lows, but life is what you make it. This FGC journey is what you make it. And it's just that real. So whatever happens, happens. When it comes to these tournaments and events, you done ran your scrimmage and all that. Now, just go into, hey, whatever happens, happens. I'ma just do my damnedest to play the best that I can that day. Because you know, to quote John Witherspoon in Friday, you win some, you lose some, but you live to fight another day. That can be applied in your FGC journey, and your life journey. We gonna have some wins, we gonna have some losses, but we always, will have another chance. There'll be another tournament. There'll be another opportunity. So being down about one, can't really let yourself, just But like I said, we are humans. We don't like losses. We don't like to lose. No one likes to fail. It sucks, but it's a part of the process. You got to go through it. So you got to be just as grateful as you are for the wins. You have to be grateful for the losses too, because the losses can lead to more wins eventually. You grow as a player, you become stronger, and then you hit that point where, okay, because it's like a cycle. Because eventually, me, Rodney, Caps, Footwork, we're all older. Like, most of us are, Feet being the youngest out of all of us, our late 20s and in our 30s. Like, High is about to be 40 in May. So, eventually, we more than likely may hit that point where we hang the controller up and retire, of course. And with you being up under us and being younger, and then you coming up, now you're going to be in our position. And then on that next cycle of players come in that are younger than you, a couple of under you, you're going to take what you went through your journey and help pass it down to them. And that's usually how it goes, because we have our OGs that are above us, and they're older. They don't play as much no more. They're retired, and they passed on what they learned to us. It's a cycle. But that's what makes this FGC journey so dope, is, you start off the humble beginning, then you start the experience, you go to tournaments, you meet your friends, y'all playing against each other, leveling up, labbing, playing in events. You may have the wins and stuff there. Like, it's such a journey, and that's what makes, as Taquito said, fighting games are great. Something special. They are, because the whole journey, I tell you this right now, I don't regret beginning to compete in no way, shape, or form. Because as a kid, I never ever pictured myself being at the point that I am now. I never pictured myself being one of the better players in the country. I never pictured myself being the best with my character in the States. I never pictured being renowned and known even outside of America. These are things that I couldn't even conceive when I was a little kid and played my first fighting game. I never thought that I would grow up and I would meet Ed Boon. I never grew up and thought I would meet Harada. I never grew up and thought I would meet Ono. I never, knew I would grow up and meet Tom Lee. All those people, that's Mortal Kombat, that's Tekken, that's Street Fighter, that's Dead or Alive. And like all these games that I grew up playing, I never thought that I would be a name in them. And I never thought that I would get to meet these people who helped create a big part of my life, as far as childhood and coming up and zooming all the way to now. So, end of the day of this journey, the final part of it is whatever happens, happens, man. And you just gotta enjoy the ride. You got to enjoy the ride. Because it's going to be one hell of a roller coaster the entire time. And there will be highs, there will be lows. But enjoy the journey, whatever comes. Because when you do eventually hit that end game, you hang that jersey up, you hang that pad up, and your legacy has been sealed and done and is intact. You know, like every athlete, they retire and they make that, you know, they make it to that Hall of Fame point, and your jersey is put in the rafters. You know, what you blaze and leave behind is what you do. And that's even in life. When we hit the end game where we pass and our life ends, legacy is what you leave behind, the impact that you made while you was here. And of course, if you have children, they're part of your legacy. They continue on what you've done. In the FGC, when you hang up and retire, the players that came up under you and you mentored, they're what you left behind. So our OGs that taught us and whatever, we're the result of what they left behind. And then when we do, that cycle gonna continue. When we hang it up and leave, you know, so it's that's why it's one hell of a journey. So it's a thrill though. If you're a competitive player, I definitely enjoy the ride. You know, and whatever you make, whatever you see yourself aspiring as, and whatever you see yourself ultimately ending up at, like the end game, the final result is solely determined on you. But yeah, man, that's pretty much the evolution of a player. I know that was, you know, quite a detailed thing, but it's quite a journey. It's quite a thing to traverse. So if this is the point of the podcast where I open up questions, or, you know, if you want to share your experiences while being in the FGC and coming up as a player, this is the opportunity for that. I usually let the last little half of the podcast be open to that, because, you know, I want this to be a conversation. Yeah, I'm kicking knowledge and sharing my experience, but I also want this to be conversational. That's why I said that's what's going to be different about my podcast, is that, you know, it's going to be a conversation. Said many of us are missing jerseys. We need to catch up and get one. Well, you know what? Sponsorship is sponsorship. If it happens, it happens. It doesn't mean you're not a great player or nothing like that, because I know plenty of players that are not sponsored, but they're amazing. Like, case in point, Mr. Naps. He's never been sponsored by an organization, but he has been one of the best players in America for quite some time. So, you know, but I know you're being funny. Yeah, sponsorship doesn't even mean you're good. It just means you're sponsored. Because I know players whose skill levels are not as high, but they're sponsored because they may be good at marketing themselves. They may be good at interacting with people. Because one misconception about sponsorship is that people think you're based off how you perform in tourney, you should be sponsored. No, that's unrealistic, because if that was the case, there wouldn't be that many people sponsored. There would be an even smaller marginalized amount of people sponsored. It would be even smaller than what it is now. Like, it would be a very, very exclusive club. It would be like having a black card. You know, only rich folk for real have those. So it's like, it would be on that level. But I have a question related to tournament prep. Do you focus on just a few characters that you have a bad matchup against, or do you review as many characters as possible beforehand? That's a very open-ended question. Of course, obviously, you want to practice as much knowledge as you can, but if you did a little research, because what a lot of players like to do is they'll see the pools and see the opponents that they could possibly run into and try to do their research by searching up YouTube vids, seeing what characters they use, this, that, and the third, and prep that way. And that's not a bad way to prep, because you're arming yourself to the possibilities of what you could fight in pool. But not every player can be looked up and researched. So the other end of that is just literally trying to deal with every character and at least having base knowledge. Because whatever fighting game you play, whether it's Tekken, whether it's Mortal Kombat, whether it's Street Fighter, Guilty Gear, Uniclear, whatever fighting game you play, I recommend you having a base knowledge on the cast. Meaning you should know enough to where your foundation is strong enough to at least deal with the common level stuff. Because the more advanced stuff is not going to come into play until you play said player and the actual match is going on. But if your base knowledge is solid, then yeah, you know, okay. It's like when I mentioned the player versus player thing. You should be going into the match with a confidence that, oh yeah, my base knowledge is strong enough to hold me together, at least for the basic stuff and the stuff that I know I'm going to see. The common stuff, like case in point, Tekken, every character has like at least 10 to 15 moves that are pretty common. Like, for example, we can go back to Mishimas. Mishimas, the things you know you're going to see is Electric and Hell Sweep. So you know those tools are, they're there, and you know they're going to possibly pop up. So arming yourself, you like, well, let's see, Hell Sweep is effective all the way to like range 1.5 to like maybe 2, but 1.5 definitely. So when I'm fighting a Mishima and they're at range 0 to 1.5, I have to put in my mind that Hell Sweep could come, and I need to be able to make the read of when they're going to do it, because you can't react to that low. That low is too fast to react to. If you can react to Hell Sweep, you can pretty much react to everything in the game. And we know that's not the case. We're not robots, we're humans. But again, you should program that in your mind that this is a possibility. Or if you're fighting Jack, you know, down back 1, down forward 2, jackhammer, like these are all things that you should know going into the matchup, and you should be able to deal with these basic things. And then when you had enough basic knowledge, you should then at that point, okay, now I need to see what the player likes to do and go from there. Even how the player likes to use those basic tools. But in your mind, you should already have the basics. So again, learning the basics. That's across the board. That's going to be across the board no matter what. Oh yeah, no problem. No problem, bro. But he said, I want to eventually make a team. What do you think the most important aspect should be to focus on? I want to make a team like UYU and AXL where the team is strong and the players are happy. And by strong, I mean the core infrastructure of the team is stable enough to support the players and sell merchandise. Well, Justin, when it comes to being sponsored and making a team, like I said, it's technically a job. So you have to treat it as such. That's why I need people to shave away the misconception that, you know, you do well in tourney, I should be sponsored. No. Because even players that do well in tourney and are sponsored, they have a responsibility of repping that team and representing it as a brand, meaning having a strong presence on social media, interacting with supporters, building your following, streaming consistently, marketing, like all of this, you know, should be incorporated into thinking of sponsorship. Because when you looking to be sponsored, you have to be all around. You have to be, especially, I tell people, especially if you're a player, because not everybody is a player. Some people are just content creators, and there's nothing wrong with that, because content is good, because content is very universal. But you could be a person that does tutorials, you could be a person that does match analysis. Like, content that can benefit is always good. So don't always necessarily think you just have to be a player just to make content. That is not true. There are plenty content creators that don't really compete or play in tournament at all. But you just have to be very good, to me, to get to sponsorship. Marketability, being good with the people, and honestly having a social media presence is very important, because that's the way of, getting out there for real. You know what I'm saying? It's a culmination of a lot of stuff. And it's not just performing well in tournament. It's not just winning tournaments. That's a small part, actually. It can be a part of it, but it's not a huge part. Wow, phrase and fine. Lord have mercy. Says, do you believe that there is a general approach that can work well for quick adaptation downloading during a set? The only thing I could say as far as that, because adaptation is honestly built for, adaptation is built over time. It comes with a lot of practice, a lot of experience, because adaptation is not something you can necessarily directly practice, but the things that you practice are a part of adapting. Adapting is pretty much just adjusting, and how fast you do that is going to come from your experience. It's going to come from how deep does your knowledge go, all of that. But adaptation cannot be directly practiced, which is weird, but that's usually how that works. But if I had to answer that, again, how well you prepare during scrimmage. How well do you prep yourself, and is your awareness good? Because a lot of players zone out and they don't pay attention like they should during match. I've seen people, and even I've done this before, thinking that they may have tied up the set and they think they got another game and they end up losing. That actually happened to me recently, and I zoned out, or not paying attention to the life lead, not paying attention to your resources, not paying attention to how much time is left. All of that goes into each other. So really, it's more so about how well you prep during scrimmage and stuff like that. It's a whole lot of things that go together. Said social media is for fame, whores, not necessarily. I'm not gonna say I disagree with you totally, because there are people who are just fame whores. So you're not wrong in that aspect. But the other half is there are people that are legit just putting out content to help people too. I know plenty of people that do that, and they don't really care about the fame necessarily. I mean, because let's be real, when you're in a profession and you do something professionally and you're out there, you're gonna gain some type of fame and notoriety because you're simply out there. But no, you're not totally wrong, bro. You do have people that are fame and attention holders. You do have those. Social media is full of those. So you are definitely correct in that aspect, but not every person is like that. Not everybody. But some people think playing online can hurt you for tournaments and that you should only play offline. I tend to disagree. What are your thoughts on offline versus online for tourney prep? That's a double-parted thing. I don't think you should completely eliminate online from training for tournaments, because that myth has been crushed by players who were strictly online and they have came offline and have done well offline. Online is a useful resource in the sense that it can expose you to a lot. We don't like online because the game, things like lag, connection, drops, all that exists. And yes, we don't like that. Obviously, I don't even like it. But I still use it because It exposes you to various play styles. It exposes you to matchups that you might not even be able to play offline because you don't have nobody in your community that plays said character. Like right now in our community, we don't have no Yoshimitsu player that plays locally. So guess what? I have various Yoshimitsu training partners that I play with online to get my Yoshi knowledge, more up to speed. Of course, you want to play offline though, because offline is where the tournaments take place. It's a very different experience from online. So you have to use both, in my opinion. If I had to say, as far as the evolution of a player, you got to use both. Especially nowadays, especially with things changing and more people are playing online nowadays than ever before. So to me, it would be kind of foolish to not utilize it as a resource. I wouldn't just solely depend on it, but it's definitely a resource. And in order to get better, you have to utilize resources. So definitely need to use both, in my opinion. That's just me though. Everybody knows, like I said, Naps doesn't really play online at all. But also, he had the luxury of playing for years and traveling, and his local community is pretty strong. Not everybody has that luxury though. So you have to make the best of what you have. Fury Fire, thanks for the follow, appreciate it. And you have to make the most of what you have though. And making, like, that's that whole probably making $1 out of 25 cents. Like, that goes there. Like, all I got is this, but how do I get here? So you gotta make the most of that. Let's see. What about the people that want to be the best? How hard should they push themselves? Well, that's pretty much the whole podcast is evolution of a player. And your journey is solely dependent on how far you go. That's like life. It's what you make it. So if you aspire to be the best, are you willing to put in the blood, sweat, and tears to be the best? Like these players that you admire so much, they put in a whole lot of time to get to where they are. Like, I remember talking to the community. Like, one person that I talk to every time I see them at an event is my boy Sanford, and we'll chop it up. We'll kick it. He'll tell me about the older days of the grind and coming up, and how him, Justin, and everybody would play at Chinatown Fair. Yipes, everybody, and the grind and how matches would go and all that. And it's definitely a journey. That's why I say it's a process. So when you talk about the evolution of a player, is putting work is no different from any craft. Like, if you want to be good or the best at your craft, you gotta put work in. Like, case in point, I have my sister who's like very strong and good at like baked goods, and her creations are amazing, and like she puts so much time into like getting good at it, like studying recipes, and you gotta practice, you gotta make these things, see how they turn out, and she has made some of the greatest cakes and creations that I've ever seen. And the plus part about it too is that they taste good too. That's important too. It can't just look good, because I done seen it has stuff that look good but it tastes awful. But she put a lot of time into her craft, like, because y'all know, if y'all follow me on Facebook, I share a lot of her finished pieces. And matter of fact, one of my favorite pieces that she's ever done, she did it for my oldest nephew. It was for his 25th birthday, and she made a Rolex cake. It was actually a big giant watch. It was a Rolex, and it was a cake. That was one of the most coldest cakes I've ever seen, and it actually tastes good too. So it's like, but she puts a lot of time and dedication into her craft, which is why she's beginning to get a consistent, strong clientele. A lot of people are coming to her now, but that's because of the work she put in. So that's no different from this fighting game stuff. How much, like, even for me, how much time I put in, how much time I practice, how much time, I travel, play against people and stuff like that to eventually reach a new level. And then to the point where you are going to gain some notoriety in the following. That's going to happen. And also 662K, thanks for the follow. I didn't miss that. Appreciate it though. Thanks for following. But it's all about time. So how far you want to go with something is solely dependent on you. So when it comes to this FGC journey, is really how far you see yourself going to. You make the most of it. If you aspire to be the best you can be, then it's up to you to be the best you can be. And that's in life. You want to be the best person you can be, that's solely dependent on you. The same thing applies to this. So, you want to be the best with it, like, especially like you're a specialist with your character. You want to be the best user of your character. You're going to put in as much time as needed to be the best with your character. You're going to know all the little situations, all the tech. You're going to go to tournaments. You're going to perform the best with your character. This, that, and the third. You know what I'm saying? It is that real. That's why you have people that are known when they're specialists. Like, for instance, Lil Majin is seen as the best king. Look at how much time he put in, how much tech he has, his tourney results, the content that he puts out. Like, he's literally putting all of this work in, and you starting to see the fruits of that labor. Oh yeah, no problem, Kazuma. No problem, man. No problem. So I want to be the best. Fine. I want to be the best Katarina in the universe. Hey, go right ahead. We don't see that character no more. So I'm hoping that somebody started playing her again, because once she got whopped, as far as the nerfs and stuff, everybody stopped playing her. So it's like, okay, so how do we do this? Are you talking about Catalina? Catalina. That's not Katarina, that's Catalina, but I see what you was doing there. Lamar, what's up, Lamar? Says, F all that, how I feel to be thought of as best Lars in America. Well, it's humbling. I don't really say it much myself. I just grind and put the work in and let, the fruits of my labor speak for itself. It's humbling that people do think that. And, I try to perform, because when people see me at a tournament, they really like, all right, I know I'm about to see some dope Lars play because L Train is in the bracket, or L Train showed up, L Train is there. And, you be anticipating that one to watch that. And I'm not going to lie, it's dope to, have the supporters and people doing that. That's motivation to perform and play. So it's definitely, it's humbling. It's dope. It's a great thing to be renowned at. And then also, it's definitely dope to hear like peers say that. Majin calls me that every time I come in the chat. There's plenty other players that say that universally around the board. Cuddle Core says that. Little bro Shadow Junior, like, by my peers, I'm called this. So, and to me, when you truly are the best or truly great at something, it's gonna like speak for itself. You don't really have to say it. That's what, most people, but hey, I just put up and perform when I need to. So that's what that is. So I have the most patient Lars. Well, I think that's just a trait of me as a player, because whatever fighting game I play, the patience is there. And that's also because of who I am, like as a person. I'm generally a patient guy. So that just translates into gaming. Because when I was playing Street Fighter V, I had a patient Nash too. So sometimes I wonder if I'm AFK. Said despite the Lars nerfs, you still make it work. Well, that's partly because I've been playing him for so long. Like, I've been playing him. I probably didn't helm him as a main until like later in Tag 2, but I've been playing him since T6. So you talking about a decade of playing with him. So it's kind of hard to not be able to adjust. And then I liked him enough as a character to still stick with him. So, you have most people nowadays abandoning their characters and playing something completely different. And it is no knock to them. I mean, I understand why they doing it, so I'm not gonna totally knock it. But I still enjoy my character, so I'm not gonna play something I don't enjoy versus I'm having fun, because it is what it is. But it's always cool to hear your peers acknowledge you in that manner, even if you're not solely playing to hear that. But to hear that, it's still dope to hear. So that's what's up. That the skill ceiling is really infinite for any character. Therefore, it is important to really enjoy them. That is actually a very good point. Because it's like I mentioned about the mirror matches way earlier in the podcast, where, most people are afraid of mirror matches because they don't want to fight their character. And a lot of times the reason for that is because they usually, when it comes to that, they mentally psych themselves out and start thinking they're gonna do the same thing that you do, which is not necessarily true, because that's what makes players unique. But again, you could bounce ideas off each other. There may be stuff that player does that you could apply to your game, and there's stuff that you do that they could apply to theirs, so y'all could bounce off each other. So mirror matches I normally don't run from. If anything, I'm paying even more attention in mirror matches, as opposed to me fighting a completely different character. Because then what I saw during that match, I may begin to apply a little more in my play. So you love mirrors? Yeah, like I said, most people don't like mirrors because they usually mentally psych themselves out. And that's a real thing. I'm not gonna say that's not real, because it is. But I still like them. I do. So when I play a game and I see you play my character, I'm like, all right, well, let's play. Because at the end of the day, you still got to play. It's still a match. You're still an opponent you're going against. You still got to get past them, regardless of what point of the tournament is in. And then also, it's a test. Like I mentioned, I said this earlier, it's a test of how well you know your character. You may think you know your character, but you may not know your character for real. So it's always a possible learning experience. So I hate mirrors because then I'm playing against Lucky Chloe, and that is terrifying. Well, her damage is terrifying. I say that. Her damage is like, for one little slip up, she could, snap kick and then, hey, fight over. Good games. But, yeah, it's crazy. So I've leveled up my Katarina by playing mirrors against LJR. Well, yeah, LJR is a solid player, so you definitely can learn a lot playing with him. So that's actually pretty good. I didn't know you were in the same community that he was, but cause I've known LJR for some time now. So that's definitely a good player you could bounce ideas and learn stuff off of. So yeah. Oh, you just play them online? Oh, okay. I thought y'all were in the same community. Well, yeah, y'all play each other, so y'all technically are in the y'all in the category, y'all in the Katarina community. See, Panther, I'm 50-50 on mirrors. I like learning new stuff, but I don't like, at the same time, I don't like getting hit with my own stuff. Well, that's the love-hating relationship, I love when I hit somebody with it. I hate when I get hit by it. And that's normal. Like, if you're a Mishima player, do you really like to get hit by a Hell Sweep in the mirror match? Do you like getting put in the Kazuya Vortex? Do you like getting laser scraped? Do you like eating a forward 3 from Heihachi? Like, honestly. Do you? You know what I'm saying? So nobody likes getting hit by their own stuff, but they love when their own stuff hits. That's very normal. I can't even knock that. That's normal. Cause I love hitting people with orbital as Lars, but man, getting hit by it, you be like, damn. So this is what it feels like to get hit by it. This is what it feels to get hit by it. Damn. Sucks. Well, let's see. Kazumi, you actually love the Devil Gem mirror. Like I said, when you have a certain level of confidence with your character, you're gonna go into the match with a certain assertiveness that, I know my character. I know what to see, and I can fight the matchup. So I'm not, tripping. I just have to pay attention to what this player likes to do, how he uses Hell Sweep, how he uses Electric, how he uses these tools, and then adapt and combat against what he doing. That's really how you're supposed. That's the general way of approaching a mirror match. Is, to me, I think more people should be confident in mirror matches, in my honest opinion, because if you know your character, you know the tools. Your job should be a little easier, because then all you have to do is, if I had to say player versus player was the biggest factor, is in mirror matches. Same way when you're fighting your rival and they know your habits, it's now player versus player. You don't have to worry about your matchup knowledge for real, because you have knowledge of the character. So, you know what I mean? It should be easy. Mirror matches should technically be easier, but I know it also is not always necessarily easier, because that mental psych out could happen. And you start thinking of what you would do with the character. So again, I understand why people don't like mirror matches. I understand both sides of the spectrum, because you can mentally psych yourself out in that case. So I understand. But also, if you have to play, be assertive and confident that, I got the knowledge. I just have to figure out what you like to do as a player. So I could almost taste the Hell Sweep coming. It's like I had a Sharingan and I could see it from my... Yeah, hey, look. I've actually played against the bro Limit Break, or formerly known as Big Majin, and he plays Lars too. And when I know he's gonna go for a certain thing, I can just feel it, and then I just react. You know, because at that point, it's no longer, I don't know the matchup knowledge. I don't know what to expect. I don't know how to punish this, punish that. It's now figuring out what he's gonna do as the player. So yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much my take on mirrors. But if anybody else has any more questions or just want to share, they tourney experiences or their own evolution journey as being a player, like I said, you are welcome. This is the segment of the podcast where it's open to that. Because like I said, this is a conversation more so than just me talking. I like to interact with everybody. That's one reason why I enjoy streaming in general so much, is I get to interact with my peoples. Even while I'm playing and y'all in the chat, whether we shooting the shit or whatever, and just having fun or talking about the game or stuff like that. Like it's interaction, and I love doing it. So that's why I enjoy streaming. And that's one reason why I started the podcast, is another way to interact where, I'm not playing, I'm just talking to you guys. Said Consuma 13. In a set, am I learning the character or the user's tendencies? That actually can be a bit of both, but more so the player than the actual character. Because see, you should be learning matchup stuff even on your own time, as far as learning how to punish things, what side you should step the character to generally. The ins and outs of the character, you should be doing that on your own time anyway. But in a set, because especially that's why when you reach a certain level of skill and a certain level of competition, it more so becomes player versus player. Because at higher levels, you tend to have your knowledge is way more advanced than somebody just starting off, or even an intermediate player. So player versus player becomes an even bigger thing. Even though technically in competition you're going against the player in general. That's a universal thing on all ladders. But the variable of it being a factor differs as you go higher. So in a set, you are definitely looking to adapt and be aware of the player's tendencies. Magus, have you ever felt unmotivated to play in tournaments? Yeah, you will hit a time where your competitive flame may dull a little bit, and usually when that happens for me, I take a break from playing and just focus on other things, but not even necessarily quitting, not even always, I should say, not even always necessarily just dashing fighting games to the side. I may just more so do more analysis on myself. Like I go back and watch past matches, because not enough players do that. Enough players don't sit down and watch their old matches. And then the one thing that a lot of players definitely don't, they don't watch their losses, because they hate watching themselves lose. Again, them highs and them lows that I mentioned in a little earlier in the podcast. You gotta take both. You can't just like when you win. Naturally, we like winning more than losing, but you can't just accept the wins. You gotta accept the losses too. But usually when I'm unmotivated, that's one thing I do to keep myself still, like sharp is you gotta watch matches. You gotta analyze what you're doing. You gotta analyze your play style. You gotta analyze all of that. In fact, you want to break down the players. Knowing the matchup is basic knowledge, but knowing the player is helpful because it starts up the psychological warfare. Exactly. Player versus player can become very deep because mind games and all of that comes into play. That's when you begin to get into the deeper side of competing. And that can definitely shape, make, or break, the way the match plays out. Exactly, Trizzy. The point of learning from your losses is to not make losses happen again or lower the chances of losing, because losses are not going to ever just disappear. You're going to lose. That's a reality of competing. Competition. You're not going to win them all. But to increase your win rate, meaning make your likely chances of a win happening go up, yes, you got to learn from your losses. But yes, that is indeed bars, Trizzy the rapper. But yeah, no, because reality, no one really likes losing for real. Because we compete for a reason. Is it Twex? Is that how you say it? Thanks for the follow. Let me know in the chat if I said that correctly. I hate messing up Twitch names. But yeah, no one truly likes losing. Like, we compete, so being competitive, we naturally want to win. Okay, I said that right. Okay, thank you for letting me know that. But nobody likes losing. I don't like losing, and I'm sure nobody in this chat plays to lose. No, hell no. I wouldn't believe that player, because it's like, why are you competing then? In that case, you could just be a casual, because then, casuals don't care. Like, the key is, you don't have to like to lose, but you shouldn't be afraid of losing. That's when, or afraid to fail. You can't be. Being afraid to fail holds you back hard. Even in life, that's a lesson that I'm consistently growing to learn about life. You can't be scared to fail. Some of the most successful people in history have experienced a lot of failure before they got to the point that that you see them or know them for. People that you may look up to, like Bill Gates, for example. He's a billionaire. He started, Microsoft and all that good stuff. But boy, did he have to deal with some failure on the way up before he got to that multi-billionaire position that he in. But when it comes to the FGC side of things, when a player is not willing to take a loss, when a player is not willing to own up to their mistakes, exactly like Effect is saying right now in the chat, you're not gonna grow. You're gonna remain stagnant and never get to where you want to be at. You're gonna constantly keep going like them 0-2 monsters. Now, don't get me wrong. You have some people that don't really aspire to be super good, and they just like being around the environment and just like being at tournaments, which is cool because tournaments are for every kind of player. It's not just exclusive to those people who aspire to be the best. You also have those that just like being there, like just playing just to pass time because they like playing, and are fans of the players who do aspire to be the best. But if you are trying to evolve, which, like I said, the point of the whole thing of the podcast is evolution of a player, you got to be able to accept losses. You got to be able to see your mistakes, and you got to be able to own up you have to own your losses just as much as you own your wins. Cause it's easy to own a win because you be like, yeah, I did that, but it's much harder to own a loss because you didn't want to lose, and losses are rough, especially if they hard losses. Like I think for me personally as a player, the hardest losses for me are the ones that come down to the wire. And you like, damn, you don't think the ones where you just get your ass whooped really bad is super. Yeah, those are hard losses too, but in that moment, and again, this is owning up, you just got supremely outplayed. You weren't prepared, this, that, and the third. And when you know that, what can you really get upset at? At that point, you're just being overly salty at that point. I mean, it's just that real. But the ones where it comes down to the wire and you lose, like last round, last hit, and those are a little harder because you literally laid it out on the battlefield and gave it your all. And it still didn't play out. It still didn't play out for you. And that's when you could possibly question yourself and begin to doubt yourself. And you can't. It's like what I said, whatever happens, happens. You have to remember that. To avoid feeling like that. Not saying that you're not going to feel like that, because you're human. And those times will happen. But when that does happen, try to, remember that. Because we all feel we all have our times. With Wiki, what's going on, man? We all have our times when we feel like that. We don't want, the matches in, it was tough, and then people try to walk up to us and talk to us immediately. No, like, give us our time to, vent and let off the steam, and then, okay, I'm all right. It's over with. That's what happened, and, next time I gotta do better. Said just in the Train to Combo Breaker tourney 2 weeks ago. My first match with Final Boss, that second game when he beat my ass 3-0, I was like, okay, I'm making stupid decisions. I need to slow down. Yeah. And that's in tournament, that's what you have to do. If you get dusted, because a lot of players, especially when they get beat bad, they tend to get overly anxious and want to jump back in and get revenge, or they salty and this, that, and the third, and you're not really thinking clearly while you playing, so you end up getting beat down just as bad, if not worse, than the previous game. And now you done went 2-0 and you overly salty, and yeah, and that ends up happening. But it's important to be able to assess and then adjust. So, yo, Coda, what's going on? Thanks for tuning in. Amy Chibi, you have a question? What is your question? But I try to stress this to every player that I talk to, especially if you're new. So I was so wound up playing yesterday, I really needed a smoke. Oh my God, Chief. Wow, that was a random question. It doesn't really pertain to what's going on. And I really can't, answer that for everybody. I just tell you that varies for people. Says not what I think. Oh my God, I guess. Said almost smacked. Oh, when you played It's That Guy 313. Wow. That's the most random question. I never even thought of that fully. But I guess if you well equipped, you would like to have room to move. So I don't know. Again, it varies. It varies. I just say it varies. That's the safest answer. But anyway, I just had to have a little fun with that question because it was so funny and random. Oh man. But oh man. But said Lars and Noctis are homies. Yeah, as far as the lore that they built that, it seems kind of random. Because it's like, okay, this is a guest character, and all of a sudden he's friends with a character that's been in the game for like 10 years. So when did this friendship start? Like, when did this happen? So I've leveled up so much from before that it still amazes me that I can go toe-to-toe with pros and have no worries. Again, the result of the scrimmage. You know, it's the result of the scrimmage. You know what I'm saying? All the work you put in, and then you know you didn't do what you had to do. That's just the confidence and assertiveness coming into play. Said Panther is final round. I'm a bow out this year because you know that weekend is the lady's birthday, and she just actually talked to me yesterday about what she wants to do for that weekend. So I'm gonna be watching y'all on stream this year. I'm going bow. Plus, this is the first year I've celebrated her birthday with her, so I kind of want it to be So I'm sure you can understand that. But I'll definitely still be watching the bros on stream though. I'm not gonna be not tuning in because I would have liked to make it because y'all know final round is a special tournament for me because that's where my extended Southern family is, and then that was the first major that I ever competed in. So that tourney holds a special place. That was my first major. So, but yeah, I'll definitely be watching y'all. Says, yo, how you beat Anna? Trizzy? Well, Anna is very 50-50 oriented. So you want to keep her at like range 2 to 2.5 to nullify a lot of her 50-50 potential, and then also to make her overextend because her effective range, her absolute effective range is range 0. She's an up close and personal fighter. So you have to keep her at a range to where she overextends and takes risk. And then of course also control the life lead, because controlling the life lead means you have a greater chance, and this isn't even not just in this matchup, this is in general as even going against players, you have a greater chance of making a overextend situation happen, because when you got the life lead, you have to do something or you're going to lose because you don't have a life lead. Most players neglect the power of having a life lead, and most of them just go in over and over even if they had a life lead, and they end up dying. Like case in point, going against Anna, you had a life lead on Anna and you end up dying because you start rushing into range 0, and now you're falling victim to all the 50-50s, and then you end up losing. And then you go back and you're like, damn, what did I do wrong? Well, you rushed in and you died for it because the Anna players started to hit you with the 50-50s. So, yeah. Said, am I gonna play at Michigan Masters? I'm thinking about going as a way, to end all the community drama, and because I'm tired of it. And at the end of the day, we all just trying to play games. All that other politics and nonsense, I'm not with it. I don't mix that with my games. I use that to escape from that kind of stuff. So I may show up and play this year. I didn't last year because the situation had just happened and it just didn't look good. But I may have a change of heart this time. How do you fight Lily? Well, Lily isn't that great up close. Her strongest tools are used from like 1.5 to range 2. So you actually want to kind of rush her down. And also use your homing moves to check her stepping because her sidestep is very strong. So most Lily players would try to sidestep you to death. And you can't let them get away with that. You want to stop the sidestep and put pressure on them. And then if you can force them to do something unsafe, and then you just punish accordingly. And that's how you deal with Lily. Lily herself doesn't have great tracking on her moves, so while her sidestepping is great, you can also step her pretty easily too. So it's like you gotta definitely use her weakness of that in the matchup too. But that's pretty much how you fight Lily. That's how you deal with that. Yeah, with Wiki, but it ain't even about it. Like I said, I just show up just to play. So I may make an appearance this time. And then this is after, there's no drama really going on directly, really big at the moment. So, I may show up. We'll see. Because I know it's in like 3 weeks. Because it's more toward the very end of the month. So, it's weird because, usually, it's usually in April, I think. Like early April. But it's a little earlier this year, I guess. So, well, I definitely, you said, I just saw what Panther just said. Yeah, Anna relies on 50-50s and full crouch mix-ups, which, again, you nullify that when you keep her at a further range. Because stuff like that is primarily, especially for her, is effective up close at range 0. So if you fight her at range 0, you're asking to catch the hands, you're asking to eat all of the 50-50s, you're asking to eat, full crouch down forward too, you asking to eat all that. So yeah. But I'm actually, let's see the time. I'm actually going to go ahead and wrap up here though. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Again, another great episode for this week. A whole lot of knowledge shared. Like I said, that's why I definitely enjoy these. I like sharing my knowledge as far as being in the FGC and sharing my journey as a player and stuff like that. Also, episode 3 we're back to regularly scheduled time, so it'll be Saturday on the next one, and normal time, 10 a.m. start, Eastern, by the way. That's Eastern. And episode 3 will be strictly about analyzation. That's the title of it. Analyzation. And that's very open-ended because you're like, well, analyzing what? Well, there's a lot of things you can analyze as a player. Analyzation. But it's gonna more so be in strong detail. Like, I'll even be giving tips on how to, break down clips things you should look for, all of that. So that will be episode 3, analyzation. Wait, hold on. Now, yeah, even if players want their, that episode I will be offering to do that. That's another part of that episode, Drizzy. So if you already have like matches in mind that you want me to look at for that episode, like I said, it's not next Saturday. It's the other Saturday. So technically 2 Saturdays from now. But if you have matches in mind that you want me to sit down, look at, and analyze, we can definitely do that. So start brainstorming and looking into whatever you want me to look at then. And thanks for the follow, Trizzy. Appreciate it. Said KJ is really adamant that I need to drop Miguel. So does Bassam, but I think he's really good and I'm getting there with him. Play who you want to play, man. Play who you want to play. I tell that to every player. If you found your character, no matter what other people think about the character, stick with them. Because it's up to you to make them work or not. Because people always tell me, oh, Lars is so terrible, Lars is this and that. But look what I'm doing with him. Sure, I haven't got an enormous win yet, but you got people that say he doesn't work at all. It's all up to you. So if you really like Miguel, then push to make him work. Because you probably know about Swagmaster from Chicago. She plays Miguel, and that's all who she uses. And she usually has pretty strong performances with him. So if she can do it, why can't you? I'm just saying. Lanky Leak Man, thanks, man. Appreciate it. It's not gonna be next week. It's every other Saturday. So I definitely not next week, but the week after that. Follow me on my Twitter at ltrain_313. That's usually when if you have Twitter, that's where I make the announcements about when the episodes are gonna pop up and something like that. Said I'm praying for the day of Lars makes top 8 at a major, like at a TWT event. Hey, look, man, I'm gonna push as hard as I can to make it happen. I've made top 16. Matter of fact, the last TWT event that I played at Summer Jam, I cracked top 16 with them. So another 2 more matches and that would have been top 8. So I'm not gonna say it's not possible. So I'm definitely gonna work to try to make that happen. Definitely. But yep, so that episode, not next week but the week after, episode 3, analyzation. So if you want a match to be analyzed, like I said, you can also hit me up on Twitter. Actually, what I really will recommend is that you hit me up on Twitter at ltrain_313, or if you have Twitter. Because I also have Facebook as well. Matter of fact, if you're on Facebook too, my Facebook gaming page, AXL L-Train, give that a like or follow and message me on there. If you have matches on YouTube and you have your links and all that, send them to that page in my Twitter. As a matter of fact, hold on real quick. I'm actually going to put the links to both of those in the chat. Hold on. So we got that. And then open up Twitter. Hold on real quick. So I got my other screen open right now. So actually, let me copy that. Make sure this fully together and working. But yeah, on those 2 pages, like I said, be sure to, if you have matches on YouTube and want them reviewed for that episode, because what I may end up doing anyway is, even when I'm not streaming, I may just watch them myself, like on my own time, in between that time before the next episode, so I can have like the best analysis I can give you on your match. So that's working. So you said I want a different match shown. Well, like I said, it could be anything, because 2 weeks isn't that much time. So, but if you want, like I said, you don't have to do it like that. I'm just saying it's a suggestion. You know, it's whatever you feel, but that's the gaming page right there. And here is my Twitter. So send links to my inboxes on that. Just title the message match analysis if you do send them to me. But that's both the links right there to those pages. And also, like I said, be sure to follow me on those pages. The Facebook gaming page is a little different. I mean, a little newer. Excuse me. It is different, but it's a little newer, so I'm still growing that page too. But be sure to follow both of those. But if you want the analysis done, those are the locations to send those. So on YouTube, send them to me. You know, and I'll look to, you know, give you the best analysis that I can. So like Trey, for example, if you say you may not want those, well, if you have a local or something in between that time, and there might be the matches, you know, like your weekly in between them, and you want those, then give me those. So, and we go from there. Also, one last announcement. Now, for anybody that watched the Train to the Combo Breaker tournament that happened, I made an announcement that the March Madness Round Robin Royale will be occurring, and that's later this month. But the top 3 from that tournament and a 4th that will be chosen this episode of Train of Thought is going down, and the 4th recipient that will be part of that round robin battle royale is my man, the Clip That President, Megas Reborn. That's who going down for the 4th spot for that. And I did that just because the amount of support that he definitely shows the stream, and he is an admin, but he also, you know, does a lot outside of the stream. He shares it on Twitter, like he does a lot. He's practically at this point like part of the stream for real. And he's in here dang near every stream. So I say, you know, I gotta show some love to you know, my Clip That President, Megas 2020. I'll be sure to, you know, tune in. But that's actually and I believe I slated that round robin battle royale. I'm aiming to do it the end of March. I'm dancing between, because I know Michigan Masters is that final weekend, so I may end up doing it possibly either the middle of next week or in between Michigan Masters and final round. So I may end up doing it possibly that Tuesday, the 24th. And in that battle royale, the top 3 from Train to Combo Breaker. And Shardell unfortunately can't, so I bounced it to Raziel since he got 4th. So it will actually be Yoj, who was the winner, and my boy High, who came in 2nd, and Raziel and now Magus being the 4th. And those 4 will compete, and they will win a copy of the RE3 remake. So, which comes out that I believe very following week. So definitely something dope to get. But so it should be fun. Like I said, I had fun throwing the Train to Combo Breaker tournament. And that turned out to be pretty successful, pretty hype, and a lot of people tuned in. So, and I just had fun. For one, I didn't have to play, so I was glad for that. I could just be a fan, and and enjoy all the moments with everybody watching. So, because I'm a player, but I'm still a fan too. So that was fun. So, 4th participant will be Magus Reborn, and that very battle royale will go down March 24th. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Participate, tune in. That's going down. I'm gonna reach out to all of them and let them know and see if that works for them. But I'm aiming for that because final round weekend I'm gonna be busy, and then I do Michigan Masters. I'll be busy that weekend too. So trying not to collide with those 2. So I'm going to reach out and hit them up and see what they say. So congratulations to Magus, and of course the other 3 mentioned. And shout out to everybody that tuned in to today's episode. Like I said, I hope y'all enjoyed it. I hope I was able to share a lot of insight as far as evolution of a player and coming up and the whole that journey and how that will work. But this has been another episode of Train of Thought with yours truly, L Train. I will holler at y'all next time.